So I just want to start by once again just offering my genuine gratitude. Thank you so much, Darshina, for inviting me to speak. And to those of you who submitted questions, we received some questions from the Women in Business organization as well as the Indian Students Club, and of course people from the Bhakti Club as well. So I just thought that those questions were really thoughtful, and I also had a number of those same questions when I was in university and also as soon as I graduated. So what I'd like to do today is really just share a little bit with you about my sort of career path and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And throughout the talk, I'll also kind of touch on how I, how I've tried to incorporate spirituality into my corporate life and just be authentic in kind of both aspects of my life. So be authentic at work and be authentic at the temple or in other places with spiritual crowd, and not have to feel like I have to, wear two different masks in order to fit in. So I'll just sort of talk to you a little bit about that, some of my struggles along the way, and I hope this will be helpful. And so the questions that you all asked, I think I'll be addressing all of them throughout the talk, but again, don't hesitate to holler if you've got an additional question, and at the end we'll have some time as well. So I'll just start off by giving you a little bit of a background on my career trajectory, and then we'll get into some of the lessons learned. So I graduated with my BBA from the Schulich School of Business in Toronto in marketing. And when I had graduated, we had been in a difficult time in the economy, and I struggled to find a job. So I think I was unemployed for close to a year. I was unemployed for like 11 months before I finally found a position. Lauren, I saw your eyes bug out. That's how I felt as well. Like, why is it taking so long to find a job? So I started working. I found a job as an assistant media buyer, and I absolutely hated it. I was there for about 6 months before I quit, not realizing what it was. I had no idea that media buying was a thing. I don't know if you guys know this, but media buying is like buying time at a television station for your client to air their commercial. Who knew that was a thing? It's a big thing, and I didn't know it. And yeah, it was just not for me. I was getting paid right at the poverty line. Like, I think I made it right at the poverty line. And working until midnight, crazy hours, really, really administrative, absolutely just was not the right thing for me. And so I quit after 6 months. Fun fact, I am still very good friends with 3 people that I met there. So not a totally useless experience by any means. So you would think that, I've graduated from university, and I realized at that time how much I felt like I was having an identity crisis because of my unemployment. And then I find a job and I felt miserable, and then I quit voluntarily. And I was like, I would rather go through that identity crisis than be at this organization. That's how bad it was. So then I was like, okay, I can find another job. And then it was about another year before I found a job. And then I found a job at this small Canadian company that manufactured, I'm going to sound so old, but they manufactured CDs, oh my God, it's so old, CDs and DVDs, and also a lot of print materials. And so at the time, my friends were getting these jobs at like the big CPG companies, which is what you want when you graduate from marketing. Like, the dream is to become an assistant brand manager at like Unilever or Procter & Gamble or Colgate, or these cool companies. And my friends were getting these jobs, and I found this job at this like little Canadian company. Ended up being the best thing ever, because one thing that you'll learn when you get into the workplace is that, at least from a marketing perspective, it's so great to be part of a Canadian company where you get to write and implement the plan versus going to an American company where you have to adapt a plan to to a Canadian marketplace. It's just a different vibe. That was a fantastic experience. I was getting paid just a little bit above the poverty line, not much more, but the experience was fantastic. Met great people, got out of my shell, but I just needed to make a little more money. So then I went to another Canadian company and I became their marketing manager. And that was also like a tiny company, had 6 people. And it was like, I couldn't work there because I just didn't have any freedom to make decisions. I didn't have a budget. It was kind of one of those experiences where I was just like, I'm not getting it. I'm not finding my flow. I'm not finding a rhythm yet in my career. but it was a good experience. But I decided that, you know, I was the only marketing person at the first company, and then I was the only marketing person at the second company. And I was like, this isn't where I want to be in my career. I need to be surrounded by mentors. I don't want to be the only one who, you know, who in my field. So I decided to go back to school. And that's when I went back to Schulich for my MBA. And Schulich does an accelerated MBA where you can do it in a year if you've done a BBA from a recognized program from them. So I did an accelerated MBA. And after that, I got recruited into Deloitte's human capital consulting practice. So Deloitte, human capital is fancy for like strategic organizational development. It's pretty cool. And I've been doing that ever since. So that's one thing. I started off my career in marketing, went back to school and made a pivot into human capital organizational development consulting at Deloitte. I was at Deloitte for about 4 years. And then during a recession, got laid off after 4 years. This bout of unemployment was very different because I was already looking for another job, found a job very quickly. Deloitte was a great experience in terms of that's where I learned everything I know about what I do today, met wonderful people. So many of those people were at my wedding. My career mentors are from Deloitte. Fantastic experience in that way, but totally not the right fit for me. It was just like, I didn't feel like I was cut out for it. I felt like I was stupid every day. All of us felt stupid every day, I realized after, but it just felt like I loved the work, but somehow just didn't feel like the right fit. I'll talk about that a little more later. Moved to this digital marketing agency where all my confidence came back. Everything was amazing. This swanky digital marketing agency downtown Toronto. I was their talent strategies manager. I was doing really cool work. Worked myself out of a job description because I did everything they wanted me to do in 6 months, and then I got laid off. So you can see I had all these great experiences, but here I was getting laid off twice in a row. The first time around was from a company where it was great, but I didn't feel like I fit. And then from this amazing company where I killed it and I fit very well and I thrived, but somehow landed unemployed again. At this point, I was like, all right, universe, what are you trying to teach me? And spent the next 6 years as an independent consultant. And I would work at organizations for like a few months at a time. And then I would travel to India and do some volunteer work, which was probably the coolest thing I've ever done. I used to joke that I was basically coming home to work to fund my volunteer projects. And then I would go back to India where I did some work with the school. I did some work with the hospital, come back, fund some more travel time, and then go back and forth. And then my last contract was 2 years. Throughout my travels in India, I met my now husband. Now we're married and living in New York City. And so I moved to New York, and now I am, so the 6 years of independent consulting and travel was amazing, really progressed in my career, but also just in my life. And now I work for a company called Solom Consulting, where I am a principal in the organizational effectiveness practice. That took much longer than I thought it was going to. So I'm going to now share my screen and talk to you a little bit about, so that's kind of like the background on me. But I want to now talk to you about, throughout all of that time, you've heard about, at a high level, some of these ups and some of the downs that I went through. But I want to talk to you about what some of my lessons learned are during this time. And again, I'm already speaking quite a lot, so please just interrupt at any time with any questions. Can somebody just confirm that you can see my screen? Awesome.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. All right. First lesson that I learned, and I hope that this is helpful. How many of you have heard about the quarter life crisis? Some of you, not all of you. The quarter life crisis is a real thing. I wish somebody told me that. So I just finished telling you guys about bouts of unemployment, times where I was having kind of identity crises. And it was a really difficult time. My 20s were really, really hard. And I'll tell you, in your 20s already are, and if you're not 20 yet, then they will be, and most of you are probably in your early 20s, your 20s are going to be characterized by lots and lots of change. Whether it's in your life or in the lives of your friends around you or your family, you're going to experience career changes. You're going to experience job changes. You're going to graduate. You might go back to school and graduate from something different. You or your friends are going to get married. You or your friends are going to get divorced. You or your friends are going to have children. You or your friends are going to move away. You or your friends might experience death. It's just an incredibly tumultuous time. Not that it's dark, not that it's hard, but you will go through a lot. And it can be dark for some people at times. One of the mistakes that I made, that you will make as well, is during that time of unemployment and I mean, side note, also being in a relationship with somebody who ended up doing something horrible. Basically, it was a big betrayal. I went through a dark period of time. And in that time, what I found myself doing was comparing myself to others. I found myself thinking, well, you know, this person got such a good job at this place and that person has this fancy title, and like, what is wrong with me? So the first thing that I would love everybody to take away from today is that you are going to end up doing that as well. I was talking to my husband about what I was going to say today, and he was like, don't tell people not to compare themselves to others, because they will. So just tell them that when you do, just catch yourself doing it. Catch yourself doing it and understand that I'll make like 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, that person is comparing themselves to you as well. Okay, so that's the first thing. Don't compare yourself to others. It might feel like that person has their career sorted out and that other person has their relationships figured out. That person is, you know, engaged to be married. That person's going to have a baby, or that person's, you know, again, getting promoted at work and I can't find a job, or whatever the situation is going to be. Your life is designed specifically for you by God, if you're a believer, or by the universe, to be designed specifically for you to learn the lessons that are important for you. So please understand that everybody's going through something. One of the tips that I kind of utilized in my own life when I was going through this comparing myself to others is gratitude. As cliche as it sounds, it's like a magic wand that helps you when you're feeling down. Give it a try. Get a gratitude journal, especially in the times that you're feeling down, and you'll see a shift in your consciousness. The other thing I wanted to say today about this is that when I told you about my career trajectory, it wasn't until I was 28 that I realized what I wanted to do, that I figured out, okay, this is where I want to be. So it's also important to understand that you might go through that as well. You might go through a phase in your, you know, when you first graduate, that you're just like, you're not going to figure it out. You might have to job hop a little. You might even change careers a little bit. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you if that happens. Maybe today this doesn't resonate, because right before I graduated from Schulich, oh my goodness, they completely program your brain. You are the cream of the crop. You can get any job you want. You're graduating from the best business school in Canada. Your life is going to be amazing. You're going to have so much money and prestige and opportunity and all these things. And then I was unemployed. My friends who I was comparing myself to were getting coffee for people. So this is something else, that at the beginning of your career, don't expect that you're not going to have to pay your dues. Everybody has to pay their dues. In business, it looks like a lot of administrative work. And now, again, imagine the shock when you come out of a school where you're programmed to think that you're the best of the best. And then, you know, I was paper pushing until midnight at this media buying agency. I was like, I don't think that was the right programming or the training. It's true that, you know, we were graduating from a great program, but that doesn't mean that we should expect that we're going to be executives coming out of school. And the other thing is that, you know, being a grown-up, as soon as you graduate, like right now, we've all gone through this path, right? It was like we went to elementary school, then we went to high school, and then we came to university. Everything was very structured for us. Everything was provided for us. Sometimes it's a little bit of a shock when you graduate and suddenly you have to be a grown-up and be the one to find a job and figure out what you want to do. So also just expect that that's going to happen. And again, know that things are not going to necessarily always be smooth. Steve Jobs gives this famous Stanford graduation speech with one line that always resonates with me. He says, "The dots always connect looking backwards." So I can tell you that based on what I've said to you so far about my career, that every single thing makes sense today. And I can't regret any of those experiences that were really difficult and terrible at the time, because they definitely led to something wonderful today. Okay. The next one is try to work for an organization whose values match yours. So this is much easier said than done, and I didn't understand what this meant. It was almost like a cliche thing that people would say to me, and I didn't really get it until I came to my current organization. So right now I work for an organization where I've never felt more comfortable in my skin. I've never felt so much that I can just completely be myself. I don't have to play a game. I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to put up a front. This organization that I work for now, Slalom, they value straightforwardness, so you don't have to like beat around the bush to say what you're thinking. They value authenticity. They love that I'm a Bhakti practitioner and totally encourage the fact that, for example, I've got different diet. You know, I'm not a drinker, you know, these kinds of things. That's very much respected and valued there. They put high emphasis on psychological safety, meaning I don't have to pretend to know everything. If I don't know everything, it's really okay to say like, hey, can someone help me with this? So one thing that I realized in that first paper pushing job is that if you give me a contract with like 185 lines and you need me to edit each line word for word, it's just not for me. It's just not something that I will be good at. And so now I'm in a place where I can say, hey, Darshana, you're so much better at this than I am. Can you please look at this and do this for me? So I work for a place today where I have the psychological safety to say that, hey, I'm not good at this. Can somebody who's good at this help me? Which is so important than pretending that you're good at everything. Now, the hard part is that you don't always know if you're going to be working for an organization that matches your values until A, you define what those values are. And sometimes that definition comes after working in a few organizations, like realizing what you don't like helps you to understand what you do like. But also you don't necessarily know if this company will walk its talk until you get in there. So another thing that I would say is talk to as many people as you can when you're applying for positions. Talk to the people who work in that organization, read the reviews on Glassdoor from real people, and make that an important consideration when you're considering jobs. I also just want to recognize that as entry-level students, you don't always have this luxury to be super selective. So I acknowledge that's true. But who knows, when we come out of this, you know, when we come out of COVID, we might be coming into a place where there might be a high demand for talent and you might be able to be a little more selective. Let's see what happens. So I can tell you that, you know, at one of the previous organizations that I worked for, one of the big four consultancies that I worked for, what I learned when I came in there, and I actually vowed never to go into consulting again, and then here I am, because I just found a place that's a better fit for me. That organization very much valued bureaucracy. They valued hierarchy. They valued competition, and they valued conforming. And I just never felt right to me. I really would look to the people who were senior to me, and there wasn't one person that I wanted to be like. And that was really telling for me. Like, I don't want to be you when I grow up. I don't want to be you 5 years from now. I don't want to be you 10 years from now. I don't want to be like these people who have made these sacrifices that I'm not willing to make. So again, I felt like a, you know, round hole in a square peg. I just did not fit. So for me, once again, to work at a place where to get ahead, you had to compete, you couldn't collaborate. And because you kind of went through that as you were kind of climbing the ranks in the organization, even the nicest people in the world, you somehow develop a mentality that like, well, this happened to me as I was going up the ladder. So that's what I'm supposed to be doing to others as they're climbing up the ladder. And it sounds crazy, like I would never do that. But it's very easy to get sucked into a culture where these activities and these behaviors are so subtle. And that's the other thing, is that your work environment has a very subtle effect on your consciousness. So don't underestimate that as well. Okay. So for me, the biggest takeaway is that, you know, I finally accidentally fell into a company whose values match mine, but I didn't do it on purpose. And some people never find that company. So what's really important is to find some kind of a passion or an activity outside of work that fulfills you, that gives you some sense of purpose. For me, especially during the bouts of unemployment, a lot of the service that I could help out with at the temple was great, because I felt like, you know what, even if I'm not fulfilled and satisfied at work, I'm still having a sense of contribution, which we all need. And I'm also doing what I'm good at, which we'll talk about in a moment as well. So that's really important. And while I was doing that, by the way, I was able to hone my resume to be able to say, these are the kinds of jobs that I want. So I'm going to start doing that at the temple for various services so that I can, you know, say that I have the experience to do it. Okay. The next one is to be a servant leader. So some of you, most of you are leaders right now at school, maybe at work as well. And when you come into the working world, you might not necessarily start in a management position. Most of you will start in entry level. So we're going to talk a little bit about servant leadership, because it's not necessary that you have to be a leader, because servant leadership is a bit of a culture. And this is where you start to see some of the principles, it's like universal spiritual principles kind of being tied into the corporate workplace as well. Because you don't have to be of a particular faith to apply these principles. There genuinely are principles that are universal. So two of the most fundamental kind of aspects of servant leadership are around vulnerability and emotional intelligence. So according to Harvard Business Review, some of the different dimensions of emotional intelligence are around being self-aware. So having a good idea of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Self-regulation, so being balanced. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse that talks about the importance of being balanced in eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. And that's also exactly what Harvard Business Review is saying is a hallmark for emotional intelligence, to be balanced and self-regulated. Another aspect of self-regulation is to like not lose it when you're feeling emotional about something, and to not transfer your stress onto others, to be able to kind of feel stressed out, but be able to deal with others in a way that you're not making them feel stressed out as a result. Motivation, so I'm driven, having empathy, and social skills. Okay, so those are some of the different dimensions of emotional intelligence. And then some traits of a servant leader include having a sincere and unmotivated service attitude. Now, this isn't what we think about when we think about the corporate world, about having a service attitude. We think about climbing the ladder and getting ahead. But servant leadership has become so mainstream now because it is actually proven to be more effective. And I'll just show you a couple of stats. 35% of US employees would forego a substantial raise to see their boss get fired. People will pay, literally pay, to see their boss get fired. 75% of people quit their jobs because they feel underappreciated. I mean, that's huge. So the value of servant leadership, both as leaders and as followers, is, you can't underestimate. 75% of appreciated people stay even if they get better offers elsewhere. I can tell you where I work today, I've received other offers and other opportunities with more money, and I have turned them down because this culture is so difficult to find. We spend 30% of our entire lives at work and at least half of our waking hours, which is insane. So once again, these characteristics are incredibly important. A servant leader is people-focused, and they put other people ahead of themselves. Now that said, you know that expression when you're on a plane, the last time we were on planes, I don't know when that was anymore, but you know that expression that they tell you that when the oxygen masks fall, what do they say? The first thing they say is put yours on before you help somebody else with theirs, which feels counterintuitive, right? Especially if you're with like a child, you want to put their mask on before you put on yours. But the whole reason is that you cannot be of service to others if your own cup is not filled. So servant leaders understand what it takes to fill their cups, whether that is time with family or yoga or meditation or prayer or whatever that is for you. We have to fill our own cups, and I would also recommend mentorship, which we'll talk about, in order to be of service to others. Okay, and the other thing is to I would love to ask you guys to do a little experiment, and for the next week, keep this in your mind. Maybe put like a sticky on the fridge or in front of your desk or computer or something that says, I am a servant. And try to remember that in every single interaction with your family, with your partners, with your friends, and even at work and at school, and see what happens. See if there's a way that your demeanor changes. See if there's a way that your consciousness changes, and see if how other people's behavior gets affected, if at all. Yeah. Have a creative outlet if you can, and also recognize when we feel envy. So envy is going to come definitely in the corporate world, especially because, again, most organizations are like that first consulting company that I worked for, where it's like you almost breed that envy. So not to say don't feel envious, because it's natural to feel that way, but and similarly just kind of recognize when that happens, be able to call it out, be able to deal with it in a healthy way. Servant leaders are always dedicated to self-improvement. So whatever that means for you, I highly, highly recommend getting a mentor or a sponsor at work and practicing some kind of meditation or mindfulness or prayer. Servant leaders create environments of growth and trust. So maybe some of you can relate as leaders of your student clubs at school. Building community is so important. Encouraging authenticity and engaging people according to their skill. Having an environment of psychological safety, once again, where people are free to make mistakes and be able to talk about it and not feel shame. And delegating. And by delegating, you're delegating to people who you feel will benefit from this. It's not like, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to delegate. It's, okay, I think that, Lisa really likes this thing, and Lisa's going to actually, if I give her this activity, she will grow. So that's the strategic way in which I delegate. Servant leaders always have high levels of integrity, and integrity means always telling the truth and always holding ourselves accountable and not delegating things that we're not willing to do ourselves. And then lastly, a servant leader is always confidently humble. So what does that mean? A servant leader, it's very easy in the working world to feel threatened by others. Somebody is like climbing up the ranks beneath you. Somebody's getting more attention from the boss. Somebody's getting more kudos or whatever it is. So somebody who's both confident and humble is able to recognize that and be able to talk about it and deal with it in a productive way. And most importantly, they understand that they're not in control of every single outcome. So there's a certain way in which that we can work so hard, and we can, sometimes corporations can like dangle this carrot in front of you, whether that's promotion or whether that's just recognition or whether that's, being in the boss's good books or whatever it is. Of course, we have to endeavor, but only to a certain extent, because we need to enjoy the journey and recognize that we're not in control of the outcome. And that's also a piece of advice that I wish I could have given myself when I was younger as well, that the outcome is just genuinely not up to us in everything that we do. So really trying to take joy in, like I said, in the journey. And then lastly, somebody who's confidently humble, because they're not threatened by others. So even when you're being leaders at school, as soon as you feel that you are 60% good at something, my mentor always says this to me, once you feel you are 60% good at something, give it to someone else, so that when you graduate, this club is still going to function. Or when you resign from this job is still going to happen. And the reason people don't do that, people who are 50 years old don't do that, is because they feel insecure. I was working on a project where we're doing succession planning for an organization, and we were asking a leader to create a knowledge transfer plan for her job, simply because when she goes on vacation, her job doesn't get done, and it needs to get done. It's a payroll function. But it took months of coaxing, because she was feeling threatened that like, well, then what's my value if I'm teaching somebody else how to do my job? It's very, very natural. So a servant leader understands that like the technical skills should be taught to others, and your value is in the way you treat people, is in your presence and the soft skills that you can bring to a team. So that's another way of being sort of confidently humble. Okay. All right. Always be yourself. I'm going to show you guys something else. I'm going to share a different presentation for a moment. This is a presentation that I gave at a conference. Can you guys see chess pieces on my screen right now? Yep. Okay. So let me ask you guys a question. Of these two chess pieces, which one is darker? The two ones that you see on the side here. Anyone? maybe you guys can just unmute and blurt it out. First one, second one, top one, bottom one. Are they the same?
Bottom one.
The bottom one?
Is the same.
The same. Anyone else?
It's the same.
Look the same? Okay. They are the same. Now, somebody said the bottom, and that's what most people say, because you'll see that the background is influencing the perception of the actual piece. So why is this relevant right now to what I'm saying? It's because we have this, bear with me, follow my train of thought, I promise this is related. Our brains are consistently being exposed to so much information and data at any given moment that we can't possibly process all of it. So we're actually only using 0.0005% of all of the available information. And what we do is, with all of the stuff that we can't make sense of or that we just don't have the capacity to process, that's how we form unconscious biases. Okay? So we have this little thing in our brain, this little pink thing that you see here. It's called the amygdala. And the primary function of the amygdala is to help us to detect danger. So it's that part of your brain that tells you, hey, don't touch that stove, or don't cross the street right now because there's a car coming, or, you know, that looks like a sketchy neighborhood, maybe take the other route, or whatever it is. Now, that's a life-saving function, but it also triggers a similar feeling of fear in situations that are not life-threatening, because we're not able to process so much information. So if there's all of this stuff out there that I'm unfamiliar with, then the amygdala is like, hey, that's unfamiliar, and so that's unfamiliar territory, so don't go there. So why is this important as I speak about being yourself? I'm going to show you guys a series of images. I'm going to pause on the images for like 10 seconds, and then just think about what comes to your mind, and then we're going to talk about it after. Okay? Okay. So don't say anything, just think about what comes to your mind. Let's go back. What did you guys think of when you saw this slide?
Speed up.
Speed up? Okay. Anyone else?
Pause. Slow down.
Slow down. Okay. What did you think of when you saw this one?
Not good.
Not good?
Danger.
Danger.
Fear.
What's that?
Fear.
Fear. Lisa, did you say something as well?
Stress.
I'm so sorry, I didn't catch that.
Anger.
Anger. Did anybody think he was cute?
He looks a little worried.
He looks a little what?
Looks a little worried.
Worried. Okay. So most of the time when I share this slide, some people are like you said, like danger, and that's crazy. And some people are like, he's adorable, and I want to hug him. What about this one?
Looks like a good view.
A good view?
Place to take a selfie.
You would say that.
Ambitious. Tiring.
Tiring. Ambitious. Does anybody get freaked out? I think it's beautiful, but my knees feel a little like wobbly when I see this picture. Okay, let's do the same thing with the next set of slides. I'm going to show you 3 more slides, okay? What did you guys think of when you saw this one?
Art.
Art.
Self-expression.
Say that again.
Self-expression.
Self-expression. Mm-hmm.
Confidence.
For some reason, Cinco de Mayo.
You just stay on mute. I'm joking. Cinco de Mayo. That's the first time I heard that one on this slide. Anyone else?
I just thought it was so cool.
Thought it was cool. Did any of you think this was a man? Did any of you think it's a woman?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody thought it was a woman. Some people are a little unsure. Okay. How about this one? What did you think?
Popular.
That's so funny because I thought dork. Anyone else?
I thought startup.
Startup.
I like a stereotypical office.
Office. Okay. How about this one?
Dedication.
Dedication.
Knowledge.
Knowledge. I always think kindness when I say this one. So what's the purpose of showing you these slides? There are some people who would look at this man and feel afraid because of what's happened in the world. There are some people who look at this kid and think he's a dork. Some people think he's popular. There are some people who think this is a really cool person. Some people who think that they're a little afraid of this person. So why does that happen? It happens because of our unconscious biases. We don't even know that they're there because, again, they're unconscious. So where do these unconscious biases come from? They come from our upbringings. They come from experiences we've had in the world. According to the Bhakti tradition, they might even come from previous lives, previous experiences. They come from maybe stories and experiences your friends have had. So for example, you know, my sister, when she sees this, she feels terror because she was chased by a dog when she was a child and that traumatized her. I have other friends who see this picture and they're just like, you know, they're dog people and they just love him and they want to come and squeeze him. So again, we can look at the same thing and think different things because of our own conscious or unconscious biases. So how does this relate? I showed this picture at, it was a Hare Krishna conference. We were talking about how hard it is sometimes to be authentic at work. And this is what some people think of as stereotypical Hare Krishnas. And we get a lot of like, get a job, or you guys are just hippies, or you guys are fanatic, or you're tree huggers, or you're just annoying and you're not relatable. And for so many reasons, there are so many reasons that it makes us afraid to be ourselves in various settings. A, because we're worried about what other people might think. B, we're not even sure what we think. Maybe some of, you know, this particular slide was presented to a group of Hare Krishnas. And I think even a lot of Hare Krishna students, some of them feel like, yeah, those are my people. And some of them feel like, I can't relate to that picture. So we're still trying to figure our own identities out as well. So there are so many reasons why sometimes it's hard to be authentic. I'll give you guys some other examples. We live in a society that values what are considered to be stereotypical masculine qualities, and they don't value stereotypical feminine qualities. So as an example, you'll often hear in the workplace, for example, if a woman is trying to negotiate her salary or, I don't know, stand up to the boss about something, you'll hear, like in movies or maybe in your own life, I've certainly heard this, go in there and negotiate your salary like a guy would. Go and do it like a dude, because if a dude did it, he's going to get what he wants and whatever. And so it's well-intentioned and it's well-meaning, but what happens is that we're being asked to suppress natural parts of ourselves as women, but even as men. Men can also be vulnerable. Men can also have these, you know, softer tendencies that are stereotypically feminine, but they're not necessarily valued in society or valued in the workplace. And so what ends up happening is that we begin to cover these aspects of ourselves, and therefore we can't show up as ourselves. So one of my lessons learned in my career is, as cliche as it sounds, always be yourself. Even if it doesn't feel like it's that kind of behavior is going to be rewarded. because what happens is there's this expression that I love, and this is how I felt in that first consulting firm. I think it was Einstein that said it, that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, he's going to live his whole life thinking he's stupid. So if you live your life judging yourself the way that maybe your parents are going to be thinking of you, certain teachers or other people in your life are going to be trying to judge you based, and not based on what you know that you're good at or what you are trying to figure out what your passion is, because maybe it's not, maybe it's like culturally inappropriate to go into the arts instead of the sciences. Maybe your parents think that being a teacher is not prestigious enough of a career. Or maybe you have, like, maybe you really want to teach, but you think that, like, yeah, but this is a position that's not really valued by the world. I guarantee you that if you don't listen to the voice today that knows what you're good at, that wants to explore something, you will have mental health issues and you will have physical health issues later on in your life. So please, please, please listen to that and be careful and thoughtful. So according to the tradition of Bhakti, there are, 4 kinds of groups of people that have 4 different kinds of inclinations. And this can be a whole talk on its own, but I can just say that, like, we have a friend and a mentor called Eddie. And I should say before I move on that those slides I borrowed from my company Solemn. So credit to them for coming up with many of those images and that whole idea of the amygdala. So back to these 4 different kinds of professions or people. There's a group of people who like to teach and they're inclined to be very studious. There's a group of people who like to lead and to protect, and they like to be very virtuous. There are people who are business minded and they have this great ability to be entrepreneurs and to scale. And then there are people who like to be engaged in crafts or in different kinds of trades. And all 4 of these types of people are needed and valued in society. But you'll see in some cultures and in some families, maybe the teachers or maybe the leaders or the business people are more valued than the craftspeople or the engineers or the plumbers or the, whatever it is. So one way to kind of, maybe some of you are thinking like, okay, I kind of get this conceptually, but like, how do I figure out, what I'm good at? So I wanted to just share another concept that I shared at that same conference where I shared those other slides from. This is from another presentation that I gave and I just stuck it in here. We were doing a session on like, what does networking look like? What should networking be? Because networking is so important in the corporate world today. That's how you get anywhere these days. And the conversation we were having is, how can I network? And as somebody who's entry level, like, what are people going to want to talk to me about if I don't have a lot of experience yet? And how can I talk about, my spirituality? Should I hide this part of me while I'm networking for jobs? Should I, how can I kind of go about networking authentically so that I can advance in my career, but without feeling gross and slimy, like I have to wear a mask? So we did this exercise of putting together our personal value statement. And I won't stay here for long because, again, this could be its own topic, but start off by identifying, and again, this is as it relates to networking. So identify your goals and who your target should be. So what is it that I like doing? And if you don't know what it is from like for example, when I was taking business, it wasn't because I particularly liked business. It was because I didn't want to go into science. And I had a bias against the arts. I was like, I can do the arts always. I don't need to get a degree in it. It was just ridiculous to say, but for me, it was between science and business. And I didn't want to get into science. So I was like, okay, cool, business. But I didn't know what part of business. But that's okay, that's a good start. Who should I talk to about it? Now I've kind of narrowed down the pool. So who's good at business that I can speak to? And then identify your strengths and your weaknesses. What am I good at? What am I not so good at? I think for me personally, I'm good at seeing the big picture. I'm good at making people happy. I'm good at listening to people. I'm good at trying to come up with creative solutions to other people's problems. What am I bad at? I'm really bad at reading really tedious contracts and writing them and some of the administrative stuff. I have so many blind spots in that area, and I'm just not going to be good at that. If you ask me to do a job writing contracts, I'm not going to be good at that. Now, how can I tie my strengths back to my goals and my targets. So my goal is to work in business. My target is to talk to people in marketing, some people in finance, some people in accounting, some people in consulting. How can I tie my strengths back, and how can I bring that strength of mine into the conversation? So maybe it's about doing some research and saying, like, you know, I understand in the field of consulting that so much of that is about listening. It's about listening to your clients' problems. And while I don't have experience with clients, I have so much experience with my friends, with my colleagues at school, and running clubs at school on how to solve problems. And then the last bit is an example of that is, you know, I can give you a real life example. When I was at Schulich, I was part of the, we called it the Scribbler. It was our like Schulich newspaper. I was part of the, I don't even remember, managing editor of the paper while I was there. And, you know, one of my strengths is to figure out how to solve problems and, you know, creative solutions to problems. And, you know, we wanted to print a story that the dean was concerned was going to affect our reputation. And so this is how I went about solving that problem. And while that's a specific problem, I feel like I can take that skill and be successful with you and your organization. And networking also means being humble and saying, can you tell me, like, you know, is that something that you would value in your organization? And what advice do you have for me? So come up with your personal value statement to just kind of help you think about, what are my strengths? What am I not good at? And it doesn't have to be super specific. Just write down the things that come to your mind and work on your own kind of value statement. And this, again, it's tying back to always being yourself, right? And kind of revisiting this regularly, your personal value statement, and revisiting, am I doing something that I'm actually feeling like I'm good at, or am I doing something that I don't feel like I'm good at? Do I just need training, or is this just like me being a fish trying to climb a tree? What is it? And being able to be introspective about that. And then maintain a personal and or spiritual practice. This is key. It's so easy to get caught up in the rat race. It's so easy to get caught up at work and spend all of your time and your energy there. And it makes sense, right? You spend at least 8 hours of your day at work. It's going to have so much mind share. It's going to have so much mind share. And no matter where you work, no matter how great the organization, no matter how happy you are in your career, you're going to encounter politics, you're going to encounter drama, you're going to have a crappy client, or you're going to have, you know, whatever, let's say, you know, maybe if you're in medicine, you'll have like, you know, you'll deal with a irrational patient or a patient family member or whatever it is. So it is so important to engage in some kind of meditation or yoga. And if you're a praying person, if you believe in the divine, then I highly recommend prayer as well, just to take you out, to just let you just transcend the world that you're in all day, every day. Because when you can kind of take a step out of it, you see how it's important in your life, but there's such a bigger world and a bigger picture that's out there. You're actually bigger than your career. You're bigger than your job. And one of the things that we all do is identify so closely with what we do. It makes sense, right? But I remember during that bout of unemployment, of being able to observe how much I identified with having a job and being unemployed, and being unemployed made me feel like less of a person. And even then I could recognize that, like, this doesn't sound right. In the tradition of Bhakti, we believe that we're not our bodies, that actually we are the spirit soul that resides in the body. So in this tradition, we believe that once we are in a human body, then we should use this life to kind of reestablish and cultivate and nourish a relationship with the divine. And then at the end of this life, we're simply moving from one body into another body. And therefore, the characteristics that belong to this body, including for me, Canadian, Indian origin, brown skin, female, straight, consultant, every single one of those designations can change. First of all, they can change in this life, but they can also change in your next life. So in my next life, it's quite possible, according to the tradition of Bhakti, to be born as like a Black, gay, male doctor. You know, something that I hate in this life. I absolutely can't imagine being a doctor, and but maybe that's what I'll be in my next life. So to identify so strongly with what we refer to as bodily designations, it's important, but if we identify too strongly with them, then we'll lose kind of that spiritual perspective and we'll get caught up in a lot of the material, sort of mundane. And if anybody wants to talk more about that, we can definitely do that. Okay, last few slides. When you think about having a corporate versus a spiritual mindset, stereotypically in a corporate world, you're taught to like just get ahead at all costs. Whereas in a spiritual world or mindset, we're kind of thinking always along the lines of being a servant. So sometimes it feels like it can be contradictory. But I'm here to tell you that everything we see on the right-hand side of this column, we can incorporate into the workplace as well. So whereas sometimes we're taught that in the working world, we're taught to be aggressive and demanding, and in our spiritual sort of side of life, we're taught to be humble, we can incorporate humility into the corporate world. We can have an others first mentality. We can still strive for peace and unity, even while we have our career ambitions. We certainly should have career goals and ambition, but you know, at what cost? We can still desire unity and peace while doing that. So again, so important in spirituality. We learn all about being detached from the outcome. This is like the single most important piece of advice I could ever give anybody today is you're not always going to get that promotion when you want it. You might not get that job when you want it. You know, that client might treat you poorly. You might work so hard on a deliverable or a certain outcome for a client and your boss hates it or your boss just favors someone else. So again, finding joy in the journey, that's a spiritual concept. Try to maintain perspective and real vision. So in Bhakti, for those of us who practice Bhakti, it is remembering that like, hey, we are spirit souls that are meant to be of service to others, which leads to the next one. You can choose to serve. We're always serving. So you can choose to serve like the corporate man, which we all have to do to a certain extent, or you can choose to serve humanity as a whole. And that doesn't mean that, you know, we don't work in corporate positions or we don't fulfill our career goals, but always maintaining that mindset that there is a larger purpose behind this attitude of servitude. And in both cases, you are who you associate with. So when you think about your goals, your life goals, think about who imbibes those goals and go seek out their association. And that's true in business, that's true in medicine, that's true in spirituality. When you want to be a good business person, go find an amazing mentor and latch onto them and learn from them. When you want to be a good spiritualist or a good, you know, maybe it's a Krishna devotee, then find a good Krishna devotee and latch onto them and learn from them. Okay, so association is everything in both cases. And then, you know, just a couple pieces of advice, and then we'll end with one exercise. We'll do it for like 5 to 10 minutes and then open it up to Q&A. Darshina, we have another 30 minutes, right? Including the Q&A?
I think we have...
Is it just 15 minutes?
15 minutes after, but if people are willing to stay on, I guess we could go on. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll try to stay on for 15 more minutes. And then if there's some questions, I can stay for longer. But I totally respect if you need to drop. So super fast. Finding a mentor is important. At work, you know, again, I'm kind of going over these super quickly. So if you'd like elaboration, please don't hesitate to contact me. Visibility is important at work, and we can talk about the right ways to do that while also being humble. In both, you know, aspects of your life, always build other people up. It will always come back, and it will always come back to you in a nice way. If you can just help others, don't feel competitive with them, but help them shine, then you will also shine. Again, have the right association, stay humble and curious. Don't be afraid to say when you don't know what you're doing or you need help with something. And again, you know, don't compare yourself to others, be detached, enjoy the journey. And then this last piece is around over-endeavoring. Understand where that line is. So again, not being attached to the outcome will prevent you from over-endeavoring to the expense of, you know, at the expense of maybe your health or your spiritual life or your spiritual goals or your family. So figure out where that line is for you and stay true to it as much as you can. Okay, so we'll do this exercise for like 5 minutes max. I know I said a lot. That was a lot of stuff and a lot of personal anecdotes as well. If you guys have access to a paper and a pen, otherwise you can use your laptops. This is going to sound crazy and morbid, but I promise it's going to be cool. So let's take 3 minutes to write, stream of consciousness, your own obituary. Sounds insane, but write what you want people to say about you at your funeral, and the time starts now.
Sorry, will you repeat the question?
Yeah, take 3 minutes to just write a few bullets on what you want people to say about you at your funeral. So we're going to do that for 3 minutes. Yeah. Lesson learned that I'd like to leave with you all is maintain perspective, because these are goals. And of course, we should be, again, driven in our careers and driven in everything that we do, but maintain the perspective. And these are the qualities that we should work on cultivating. These are the qualities that we should, like you said, like, what do I need to do today for people to describe me in this way? And that should be an equal meditation, if not more of a meditation, to how do I get that promotion? How do I get that raise? So that's everything that I wanted to say. So thank you so much again for having me. And yeah, I would love to answer some questions. And we talked about that as well a little earlier in terms of putting on your own oxygen mask before you put on someone else's. So part of being of service to others means you have to take care of yourself first. We can get super esoteric and start talking about, but who is the self? But we can do that at another time. But I fully agree that self-care is essential. It's just essential. We won't survive, and we certainly can't be of service to others if we're not looking after ourselves. And
Presentation you were talking about, sometimes you worked at a company where you felt like you didn't fit into the company's values. Did you ever feel like other than the values, you really liked the job and you wanted to continue working there, you liked the pay, you liked the people, you liked your work, so you tried molding the values of other people in order to fit into it?
hell yeah. Hell yeah. I tried to mold myself. I also tried to mold other people, and I was unhappy. I remember there was one day, I mean, I'm working for this big Four consulting firm in downtown Toronto, and I remember one day I was walking like in the path downtown, and I was wearing a black blazer and black pants and black heels, and I had a BlackBerry in my hand and a Starbucks cup. And there was one moment when I was like, when did this become me? Like, when did I become somebody that has only, like, you would open my closet and all you saw was black and gray. And again, I was like, when did I become a BlackBerry holding, Starbucks carrying, black suit wearing person? And that's just like externally. I definitely tried to fit in because I thought that was what I needed to do. It just never felt right. And then when this company, they were really good at, like, there were plenty of other people who shared the same diet as an example. So like that wasn't a problem for me. But if I tried to get people to think like me in certain ways, or to get people to, maintain a certain perspective or have deeper conversations or so on. And I mean, again, I worked with really wonderful people, and some of my best friends are from that time of my life. But from like a strict corporate perspective, that didn't work either. So yeah, hell yeah, I tried both. It didn't work. And that's why I'm so grateful that I was able to leave there and work in so many different organizations that were a better fit for me. And now I feel like, again, I'm at a place where I'm just so grateful because there's no need for me to mold or to mold others. So yeah, thank you, Pulkit, for saying that. And thank you, Simran. I want to call you Sim because I have a friend named Simran who we call Sim. I don't know if that's okay, but thank you for that question.
Okay. No, yeah, thank you for the answer, and thank you for the session so far. It's been so insightful. Like,
I'm so glad. Thanks for saying that.
So many notes during it. It was super awesome.
I'll go on to another question if you're all right with that.
Of course.
All right. You talked about getting a mentor at work. What should I look for in a mentor?
A really, really, really good question. Whenever you're looking for a mentor or a sponsor at work, look for somebody who has a similar career trajectory to what you would like. And if not, can at least help you achieve your trajectory. So oftentimes it ends up being somebody who's senior, like quite senior in the organization. Somebody who you resonate with in terms of their nature. So, there are lots of great people that you're going to work with, but might not resonate with you in terms of your nature. So for example, somebody, if I want to progress in my consulting career, there might be somebody that's like, the only way to progress in consulting is by getting into sales. And so let me help you get into sales versus, I don't consider myself like I like sales, but I don't consider myself a salesperson. So I prefer having a mentor that understands kind of the rounded nature of consulting and how it's not just sales. So that's just like one teeny example in my particular world. But again, somebody who understands and can help you and from experience. Also from a work perspective, it will behoove you to get somebody whose advocacy will also be good for you in your career. So somebody who has a say in decisions, somebody who maybe has access to people so that you're getting visibility through that person. So there's a little bit of strategy involved, even though I don't like saying that because it's not about getting ahead, but it is about somebody that can take you under their wing and with whom you can feel safe and have that psychological safety as well. The last thing I would say is somebody who also has like kind of that technical acumen as well or they're connected. So when you, let's say, and I hope it's okay that I keep relating it back to like my business experience. I recognize not all of you are in business, but like, if I'm on this change management project and I've never had this situation before, I can go to this person and say, how would you handle this situation? And that person can coach me or direct me to somebody, like they're connected enough to direct me to somebody who can help me. And the reason I think this is such a good question is because I've had several mentors and coaches at work, and some of them have been great and some of them just have not. And sponsorship and mentorship programs have proven to sort of help people progress more in their careers, but only when it's a right fit. So yeah, try to find the right fit. And if it's not the right fit, then, continue to maintain that relationship with someone, but find someone else who is the right fit for you and don't feel bad about it. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I thought that was a really good answer. It was very helpful for me. Another question, what advice would you give your first year self when envisioning what job or career you should aim for?
That it's two things. One is the reversals are going to end up being amazing. And so going through that linear path isn't for everyone, and it wasn't for me. And I'm so grateful that I had like apparent reversals that allowed me to travel and do all these other things. So to just be a little flexible and go with the flow. And also listen to what your nature is. Listen to what you want, what you feel that you're good at. Not that, okay, I'm good at this, but do I want this? And, don't listen to the voices that are telling you what they think you should do, and really try to find your voice and what you want to do and see if you can make a career out of that. And lastly, same thing, find someone to bounce these ideas off of who has your best interests at heart. It might even be a parent, it might be a sibling, or, find somebody in the working world that can, coach you from now. Like there's no reason why as a student you can't reach out to some mentors in the business world, and LinkedIn is a great tool. I wish there was a LinkedIn, but for work environment style. Yeah, that would be amazing, Lisa, I totally agree. There's Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a great place to check out reviews of what a company's culture is actually like. So that's a good place when you're looking for a good place to work.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I like that question, or what Lisa mentioned as well. Another question, I feel like the culture or community I'm currently in isn't right for me. I don't know how to get out of there because I don't really know what I want. What is the first step for finding out your self-purpose for what you want?
It's an amazing question, and I think this can be answered in multiple ways. So what I can say is, what's preventing you from figuring out what you want is probably, and I could be wrong, but I feel like when it was me and when I see other people in my life going through that, there's a lot of noise that's preventing them from like getting to the essence of themselves. It might be voices of parents, it might be voices of friends, it might be voices of society, it might be teachers or colleagues. Maybe you're working today and there's colleagues that are like, you're going to be the best accountant and you should keep going on this path or whatever. So the best way to kind of still that, to quiet down that noise and to just kind of try to clear it, to get to what you want and what you're really sort of hoping for, is intentional quieting and meditation and reflection. So I would say for me, and again, I recognize this might not be for everyone, but talking it out with a well-wisher / writing some reflections and being introspective. And if you are a praying person, I highly recommend prayer as well, because sometimes we need a little help, at least for those of us who are spiritual. We need a little help from the divine to just kind of help us clear some of that fog. It's hard work to do on your own. So a little bit of divine intervention and help it can go obviously a really long way. But yeah, it just starts with honest reflection through writing, trying to quiet the other voices. And also sometimes it's hard to even recognize that you're feeling tension with a particular voice, whether that's a parent or something else. So just again, that reflection to realize, where's the tension? Just pause. You know, when I have this conversation with this professor or my mom or my dad or this sibling, there's something in me where I feel a little bit of tension, and start from there. Where do I see the tension? And then go backwards. Why? Why do I experience that tension? Because I really care about what this person thinks about me. But, you know, what do I want? And just kind of try to get like through a series of questions to yourself to that answer. And so again, it boils down to meditation and reflection and prayer, if you're open to that, and talking it out with a sounding board as well. And it's kind of a generic answer. If whoever asked that question, if you'd like to chat more and we can get more context, we can try to help you out with that as well.
And we have one final question here, so I think we might be perfect on time. Can you give some advice on imposter syndrome? I feel like I'm always selling myself short in interviews and feel underqualified if I get the job.
So this is interesting because I'm not sure who asked this question. You don't have to say. What I will say is that women have a tendency to only apply for jobs when they feel 100% qualified, and men have a tendency to apply when they feel like they're 60% qualified. And when I was growing up, I remember like my dad was always just like, who cares? Just apply for like a VP position at an entry level. Like it doesn't matter, because often what can happen, and it did happen for me, I would apply for jobs that I was grossly unqualified for. And what would happen was I'd get a call from a recruiter that says, yeah, so you're not really qualified for this one, but we have this other thing that might be open. So that can happen. So imposter syndrome, you know, it could be a good thing. Humility is good. But also, again, balancing that out with confidence and not being afraid to take chances on yourself. But again, what's key is being detached from the outcome. So for example, I'm just using the example of applying for jobs because I think that was in your question, or mentioned in your question as well. Take risks, put yourself out there. Go send out like 100 resumes and maybe one will bite, and don't be sad if only one bites, or if none bite, or if only 2 of them bite. In fact, statistically, it is a numbers game. Just keep applying, because somebody will eventually bite, and be detached from that outcome. And just know that again, there are other people the same age as you who are equally unqualified, if not more, who are also applying. So there's no harm. If you're humble, if you're curious, then imposter syndrome can be healthy because it's humility and you can learn from it. If it becomes paralyzing, then obviously then that's not healthy. And you know, I would talk it out with someone and also, you know, work to get yourself to a place where you don't feel that way. But my personal viewpoint is always like, who cares? Put yourself out there. My father really programmed that in my brain, and it opened a lot of doors for me to just go ahead and apply and see what happens. And then the same thing, same disclaimer that if you want to talk more about that, then please do reach out. I'm going to put my email address in the chat as well. Because I think some of these questions, I'm being a little bit generic in my responses because, you know, the questions are a little, I don't have the context. So if you'd like to discuss more, please feel free to reach out. And I have time for one more question, Simran, if that's okay with you, Darshana. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I had a question. So just about, you talked about like how you found a culture where you could maintain your spirituality, but on your journey, did you ever feel like it's coming in the way of relating to your coworkers, or you're unable to make friends or connect with people at your work, or did you ever feel like you're actually missing out on opportunities because of your spirituality? Like, do you feel like it's holding you back and you just want to let it go? And if you did,
Really,
from that.
yeah, thank you for asking. That's a good question. I remember so I've always been kind of spiritual my whole life. I've always had a spiritual practice, so that I never felt like that was an impediment. However, I remember like when I started to like stop drinking, when I started to, you know, lose taste for like going out to like the bars or the clubs as much as people wanted to, I think I had a transition period where I myself wasn't super comfortable in my own skin. It was like, I kind of want to, you know, stop. I was never really a drinker anyway, but like, I kind of want to stop going to the bar or whatever, but I don't really want to go eat at that restaurant because I'm a vegetarian and it's like, there's nothing vegetarian on the menu or whatever. So when I wasn't super, you know, confident and comfortable in my own skin, that's when I feel like there was tension. But as soon as I became more like, again, confident, and when I had more conviction, then it really didn't get in the way. And I feel like, and I don't know if this is unique to my organization, but especially in the States right now, and I'm sure in Canada right now, there's always like this emphasis on diversity and inclusion. So in the name of diversity and inclusion, it's okay to start saying things like, hey, can we have more vegetarian options at these events? Or can we have more options for people who are not drinkers? Can we just every event have to be a happy hour? And given the state of the world today, I think people are more and more open to those conversations. So like, and I'm sure that if we're feeling that way, there are other people who are feeling that way for other reasons. Maybe there's, you know, people who have to go home on Friday for a Shabbat dinner. So can we do some of these socials on Thursdays instead of Fridays? You know, I know in Canada that's very common to do socials on Thursdays for that reason. And then the other thing that I found was that as I was becoming more and more open about my restrictions, that there were so many other people who had comparable things. So these days it's like a fad to have a dietary restriction, for example. There are so many people who don't drink. There are so many people who have like, you know, GI issues when they drink or whatever it is. So it's just, I don't feel uncomfortable anymore talking about that. But I did. There was a point when I did, maybe like a year, where I was kind of going through my own sort of transition. And that's when I can see in retrospect that when I was uncomfortable in my skin, it did affect relationships. But as soon as I started being comfortable, it did not at all. Everybody respected it.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thanks for the question.
All right, so I don't see any more questions on the forum or in the chat. I'm just looking to see if anyone's like raising their hand or anything. But yeah, we've shrunk to a small group. But thanks to everyone for sticking with it to the end. And thank you so much, Radha Bhakti, for joining us. We really appreciate your time. I learned so much. I'm sure everyone else did as well. Yeah, we'd love to, in the future, have you again, maybe for a different topic. We'll definitely keep in touch. But I think everyone here took away something very valuable from the session. So thank you so much.
Of course, and thank you again for having